Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Redford. I'm a youth services consultant at the Idaho Commission for Libraries, and that means that I help library staff and librarians around the state with their programming for families, for young people, and for today, talking about their teen services.
Hi, and I'm Maria Ricks. I work at the Meridian Library District in the Outreach Department as a youth services librarian.
Maria and I have been trained as trainers for the state of Idaho for a project called Transforming Teen Services. And this is a project that was funded through a grant from the Institute for Museum Services and Library Sciences, or IMLS. And it's a partnership between YALSA, which is the Young Adult Library Services Association, and COSLA, which is the Chief Officers of State Libraries Association. So there is this need across the country for support for teen services, and it was felt everywhere. Every library, public and school libraries, is feeling that they need a little bit more professional development when it comes to teen services. So Maria and I were trained to implement a series of trainings in Idaho to help support Idaho library staff who serve teens in their programming and in their services. This part that we're doing today is called Connected Learning. We like to call it Level Up Teen Learning. And it's just a part of this bigger Transforming Teen Services banquet, if you will. We're just having a little meal today. But our hope is that you'll come away with a framework of understanding for what connected learning is. So we're going to go ahead and get into our presentation. I will share my screen. After I move this over. Okay, let's try that again. All right. So when we talk about connected learning or leveling up teen learning, what we're really talking about is using relationships, interests, and opportunities to make sure that teens have a fuller learning experience at your library. So the goal isn't that you're just occupying teens or serving one need, but that you're really serving all of teens in like a whole way through interests, opportunities, and relationships. By the end of this module, you should understand the philosophy of connected learning as it relates to educational and career opportunities. You should explore the principles of connected learning, and you should think about how to integrate connected learning theory into your library practice. So we really want you to have an understanding of the theory behind connected learning so that when you go back to your library, you're equipped to craft services and programs that are relevant to teens and really use that interests, opportunities, and experiences framework. So let's go ahead and get started.
So what is connected learning? Connected learning is where interests, opportunities, and relationships meet for a deeper learning experience for your teens at the library or out in the world. Connected learning brings together personal interests. It provides opportunities to learn about those interests and the ability to build relationships with others in order to gain insight and knowledge of those interests. In the video below, Mimi Ito discusses what connected learning is and why it is important. As you watch, think about how connected learning resonates with your own personal teen experience. You'll have a chance to reflect on that in the next portion of this lesson.
Many years ago, when my son was 7 or 8 years old, so about third grade, still a little guy, he went off on a hike at a canyon not too far from our house in Southern California with his dad. And when he got there, they found a pond that was full of tadpoles. So of course he dumps his water out of his thermos, scoops up the tadpoles, and brings them home. And of course, when they come home with this thermos full of squiggly creatures, I am not terribly delighted. But Dad says he's going to go right away to the aquarium shop and figure out what they need to do to raise these tadpoles into frogs. So they take off. They're gone for a long time. And then when they finally come back, they have a huge aquarium with 2 different kinds of sand, rocks, a special light, a screen, everything these critters could possibly need. And my son, he's just beaming. And I think, oh, he's just so happy that he scored all this stuff. But it turns out what he was so delighted about was somebody he met at the aquarium shop, the Aquarium Shop Guy. So it turns out the Aquarium Shop Guy, when he was my son's age, went on the same walk in the same canyon, found the tadpoles, scooped them up, brought them home, and he did research and figured out how to raise tadpoles into frogs. And he described this moment in his youth to my son and why it was really important to him and how it was part of his trajectory to picking his chosen vocation in life. And what I found was so interesting is that for several years after this encounter, when my son was asked that ubiquitous question, what do you want to be when you grow up? He would scratch his little head and he'd say, I think I might want to design video games, or maybe I'll make robots, or I know, I could be an aquarium shop guy. So we're talking today about the future and about learning and about technology, but at least for me, at the heart of the matter is really this question about how we can help young people find their aquarium shop guys. How do we connect them to those passionate experts, the enthusiasts who not only have a ton of knowledge, but who are excited about sharing it, who infect young people with the enthusiasm about what they care deeply about? Now, fast forward about 10 years. My son's about to graduate from high school. He towers over me. He's over 6 foot tall now. And nowadays, whenever something sparks his interest, the first place he goes is online. He Googles for something, he finds a YouTube how-to video, and he finds his aquarium shop guys in communities of interest on the internet. So I think the question and the challenge in front of us for the next 2 days is really about, how do we think about the new opportunities to engage young people in a context of absolute abundance of access to knowledge, to information, to experts, to expertise, when our institutions of education were founded in an era that presumed a certain amount of scarcity, right? You had to go to your library, your museum, your classroom or your aquarium shop in order to gain access to experts, to have the scarcity of specialized knowledge resided in these institutional frameworks, whereas our kids today are growing up in a very different context, much less the kids in 2030. So the question is, when these kids, these always connected kids, encounter our infrastructures and structures for learning that were created in a very different context, how do they experience that, and how can we adapt to their new experiences, their new opportunities? Now, the tension between in-school and out-of-school learning, of course, is nothing new. I mean, kids have always complained about lectures being boring, have passed notes with each other in class. These dynamics are, have certainly predate the digital age, but the context around the classroom has changed so dramatically that a lot of the ways that we've historically coped with this tension, incentivized kids, engaged kids, are really not as applicable as they once were. Now, we've known for quite some time that young people start their schooling years pretty engaged and eager to learn, but by the time they reach our institutions of higher education, most teens would be considered disengaged from learning, from formal education. And we often hear about, and I think we're all quite aware of the equity gaps in access to formal education. I think the thing that gets less talked about is the equity gaps in access to out-of-school and informal education. So this is just one of many statistics about how these gaps have been growing in the out-of-school area. So this is a comparison of the poorest fifth of families in the U.S. and the richest, and their relative investments in out-of-school enrichment between the 70s and 2006. And you'll see that the poorest families have consistently invested about $1,000 a year per child, whereas the richer families, their investments have tripled from $3,000 to almost $8,000 per child. So you put this alongside the fact that public schools are increasingly not able to deliver a lot of extracurricular activities for lower income students, and this gap is a really yawning chasm at this point. And the growth of investment in out-of-school enrichment is not only about the fact that schools can't necessarily deliver on all these specialized experiences, but also the fact that more and more families are realizing that in order for their kids to be successful in life, not only do they have to do well in school, they also have to save the world a couple times and have 1 million followers on YouTube and, be able to look a grown-up in the eye and have perfect hair and have that firm handshake, have those experiences of performing, publishing, competing in a public place where they get genuine recognition for being really good at something. And those are the experiences that are increasingly differentiating kids' learning experiences and making a difference about their success in life. Okay. So let me make it a little bit more concrete. So what I do is I hang out with kids on the internet and play video games with them and listen carefully about how they view the digital world. So Tal is a young woman who was part of one of our research studies. She was 11 when we interviewed her, and she was a big fan of Minecraft. She learned about Minecraft at home. She was playing with her cousin in the home context. And because Tal attended a fairly unique middle school called Quest to Learn, which embraces a game-based pedagogy, when she went to the school and said, look, we want to start a Minecraft club, the teacher said, sure, start a Minecraft club. But she was still doing a lot of Minecraft at home, and like most Minecraft kids, she watches a ton of Minecraft YouTube videos. And she got inspired by the videos and decided that she wanted to make some herself. Again, she brought this to the school. They said, sure, we'll make videos in the club. And so she started writing scripts and producing these videos with her peers and teachers at school. They were really supportive. They encouraged her to continue this work. They celebrated her by writing about her in the school newspaper. And eventually these experiences connected to her desire to pursue writing and creative production within her academic settings as well. So Tal is an example of what we call a connected learner, where she had a passionate interest which was sparked by popular culture and a video game. She was in a context where she had supportive relationships from peers who shared her interests and adults who supported the interests. And then she was also able to connect that informal learning opportunity to opportunity and recognition within the school context. So this is, in a nutshell, what we describe as connected learning. It's basically when a kid is able to do something they care personally about, have an interest or an affinity for, where they are able to engage in that interest with the support of other peers who share that interest and adults who support that interest. And then the last piece is to connect it to actual opportunities for academic achievement, civic engagement, or career advancement. And connected learning, we're not saying that all learning has to be connected learning all the time. I get a lot of pushback from educators who say, well, they have to learn things they're not interested in. And I get pushback from kids who say, hey, sometimes we want to just have fun with our friends without it all being about like getting ahead in life. So that is very important. But we do believe that every child deserves to have the experience of connected learning, because this is the kind of learning where you get the biggest bang for your buck, because it's what a kid genuinely cares about. It's about the social relationships that matter for them. And this is the kind of learning that helps them find their place in the world and discover who they are. Now, the moral of the story of TAL is not that the internet creates connected learners, or that Minecraft creates connected learners, or even that Quest to Learn creates connected learners. In fact, when in our interviews with hundreds, thousands of young people, what we find is that more typically young people are struggling to connect their learning in school and out of school, struggling to connect what they're interested in to career pathways. And so most young people have an interest, most young people have friends, but also, most young people are struggling to find a connection, especially between their digital interests and what's happening in school. So the typical scenario is that, they're doing something for fun at home with their peers. They may have a connection to a community-based organization like an after-school club or a museum or a library that's informally supporting some of their interests. And they may have some hazy idea how they want to become like a video game maker or something career-wise, but the concrete connections to school environments for most young people are not there. And part of the problem is that when we think of education, we often frame it as a pipeline where the kids start there and our job is like to keep pushing them up one more step in the pipeline, and that if they make it through high school, if they make it through college, then of course they're going to find their thing as a grown-up in their career. But when we talk to people who are actually successful in areas that are around tech, around creative pursuits, that are around fast-paced innovation industries, what their learning support system looks like is more like this. So the formal pipeline, yes, is incredibly important, but there's also a whole host of supports, whether it's in online communities, whether it's through peer groups, whether it's through museums, libraries, community-based organizations, family members, and this is what a real learning network looks like for young people who are successful in these new areas. Now, of course, sometimes there's some exceptional individuals who are able to make it through the pipeline without this extraordinary set of supports, but more often than not, when you query people and who really supported them to become a scientist or an engineer, that this is where the equity issue becomes very acute, because more privileged kids are much more likely to say they have STEM mentors within their families and communities and so on, and that doesn't get counted within our usual educational accounting about what contributed to their success.
So, this video is very inspiring about how relationships and interests work together to create opportunities, and how librarians and community members can be part of that. Think of Tal from this video. She was 11 years old, interested in Minecraft. Who is your Tal? Who is the person that you know, either from your personal life or from library work? What kind of interests do they have? It doesn't have to be the same one. What kind of interests do they have? And how do those relationships and interests spark opportunities? Now, if you have a little bit more time later, jot down some notes and then think about what kind of programs or services can your library offer to help this young person extend their learning so that their relationships, their interests, and their opportunities can combine and work to make more opportunities and more interests and more relationships.
So now we're going to do a little self-reflection on connected learning, and because to really understand what the concept of connected learning is, you really have to empathize with the teens who come into your library space. And to empathize, you have to remember that time when you were a teenager. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions just to sort of jog your memory about your teenage years. These aren't meant to bring up any dark memories, and if you would rather skip it and just pretend you can't hear me, feel free. But I really hope you'll take some time to think about when you were a teen, because that will really help you understand the mindset of the teens that are coming into your libraries and sort of where they're at developmentally, so that you can craft services that really help them connect their interests, experiences, and opportunities. So think back to your teenage years. How did your interests through opportunities and relationships? Or how did you connect interest through opportunities and relationships? Think about, what were your interests when you were a teenager? How did you learn about those interests? What opportunities did you have to connect with resources and people to learn about those interests? How did adult and peer relationships have an impact on your learning about those interests? And I'm just going to give you a few seconds of quiet time to think about these questions and reflect on your teenage years. All right. Now let's talk about theory into practice.
So now that you've been thinking about the teens that come to your library and how this works with them and how it worked for you when you were growing up, let's look at some practices that we can use in our library to make interests, relationships, and opportunities to come together to find true connected learning. The Chicago Learning Exchange developed a guide for embedding connected learning principles into services and programs for youth. The guide breaks down the ideas of interest, relationships, and opportunities and provides ideas on how to implement each of those in your work. So we have a sorting activity for you. Now, because you are seeing this later and we're doing this right now, we're actually just going to answer the questions. But I want you to go along with us as we ask, what are the best practices for you in your library as you work with teens? And really, this is for everyone as well. So, you ready, Jennifer?
I'm ready, Maria. Let's play the sorting activity.
All right. Do you try to fix young people?
Not if you're practicing connected learning.
Yes.
Okay, Maria, when you're working with teens, do you take over?
Not if you want to do connected learning. Jennifer, do you let the teens take the lead?
Yes, that's a great way for teens to display their interests and really understand what they're doing. It's a good practice. Maria, do you let the teens try new things?
Yes, because that can spark new interests. Jennifer, do you open doors to opportunity?
You sure do. There's lots of ways to do that at the library. You can bring in outside community partners or presenters. You can obviously offer access to library materials. You can even just connect someone, a teen at your library, with a digital resource they didn't know about. Maria, when you're working with teens, do you share your passions and curiosities?
Yes, you can be one of those relationships that teens develop new interests through. You can help bridge opportunities in things that you already love. Jennifer, can you be genuine?
You should be genuine. Teens can spot it when you're faking it. So don't try to pretend, just be yourself. Maria, when you're working with teens, should you forget what it's like to be a young person?
Try not to. It's good to reflect back. Jennifer, should you create space for failing safely?
Yes, this is actually a really important part of connected learning. That's how teens learn, by failing. And it's in a school environment that can often have consequences that don't happen in a library setting or an out-of-school setting. So rather than not understanding your science homework, you can just try and try again until you get it, and you can try different ways than curriculum dictates. So yes, create space for failing safely. Maria, when you're working with teens, should you recognize cultural differences?
Most definitely. Lots of different cultures out there through ethnicities and religions and just general experiences that these teens have. And as we recognize each other's cultural differences, we can bridge even more relationships, more interests, and develop more opportunities. Jennifer, should we help teens level up?
Yes, that's why we call it Level Up Teen Learning. Connected learning provides opportunities for teens to scaffold their learning. So you might start small like Tal did with just watching Minecraft YouTube videos, and then level up to creating your own through opportunities and relationships. Oops, do that. Maria, should you model inclusivity with the teens you work with?
Yes, most definitely. It's good for all of us to see someone including everyone. Jennifer, should we help young people design programs?
We should. This is an integral part of connected learning. You want to take teens from the place where you're providing the programs to where they are using their interests, experiences, and opportunities to create programs. Maria, when you're working with teens, should you judge their interests?
No, just because their interests are different than ours does not mean that they are less. Jennifer, should you overpromise to teens?
No, you should definitely have a realistic expectation of the services you'll be able to provide and the access you'll be able to provide. It will help build that relationship by making you someone they can trust. Maria, when you're working with teens, do you put the teens first?
Yes. So this is their programs, this is their ideas. They should be an important part of it. Jennifer, should you be a good host in the library, especially in the teen space?
You should, and it can be hard because this can be a challenging age group. But your library space can be a place where everyone in your community is welcome, including teens who might need a little assistance in learning how to behave in ways that make sure everybody can use the space. And part of being a good host is setting positive behavior expectations. Maria, when you are doing programs or services with teens, should you be the first to answer?
No, not necessarily. Let the teens have opportunities. Let the teens have time to think about their answer and figure out what they are thinking. Jennifer, should you yuck someone's
Oh, that
yum?
should read yum. I need to go back and edit that. No, you should not yuck someone's yum. And that means you shouldn't be down on their interests or criticize them. Um, you know, it can be a very sensitive time of life. And if someone that you really respect just says one critical thing about something you're really interested in, that can totally ruin your day and yuck your yum. So don't do that.
I definitely hate when people yuck my yums.
Yes. All right, Maria, when you're working with teams, should you assume things?
No, assumptions don't help any of us.
All right, we did it. We were able to talk about things we should and should not do when you work with teens in your library. Hopefully that will help you when you're doing programs with teens. Okay, speaking of your library, let's talk about how you can provide services and programming with intention. As you thought about your own teen experiences and read about actions you can take to promote connected learning, you probably started to realize that interest-based learning enhanced through relationships with peers and adults and opportunities to extend learning is not new. In fact, this is something we've been doing at the library for a really long time. But we don't always do it with intention. And we don't always build our programs and services with the expectation that we will be providing these connected learning opportunities for teens. We're going to watch a video below from a rural library in Idaho. In fact, it is from Salmon, Idaho. Through maker activities, this library is providing connected learning opportunities for teens and really for everyone in their community. As you watch the video, think about how the activities described connect with connected learning.
Hi, I'm Jeff Strader, the vision behind this project of creating a community accessible makerspace right here in Salmon, Idaho. I love the idea of a multi-generational approach because it engages the community at what it does best. It brings traditional craftsmanship from local experts.
I'm David McCampbell.
My name is Kerry Schwartz.
Integrated in a space with emerging technologies, giving both generations something to teach and learn.
There's a gal here in town that she said every time I'm around you, I pick up something new I hadn't thought of before.
Teaching experience that I've had has been probably as gratifying as actually doing the work itself.
We use design thinking as a way to teach kids how to make with purpose. Now they're not just making, they're using making as a way to solve community problems.
We challenged our kids to interview friends and family to identify a problem in transportation. They invented an electronic system that requires ATV riders to wear a helmet.
I think that when a space like this can enter a community, something changes in the perception of what you can do.
The model of learning gets flipped when we stop telling our youth what to learn and start asking them.
When you said engineering and then you guys said skate park, I thought, oh, what if you guys used engineering and math skills to design a skate park, right? I think kids are very, very capable. What I think we run into problems with is more engaging kids and on their level and understanding how it is to engage them.
Perhaps a lot of people in the world are starved for hands-on accomplishment.
They can be here in our town and just walk down the street and have a hands-on experience.
The goal will be to alleviate the burden of the underserved and give them an opportunity to explore an idea or create one.
An underprivileged home doesn't have the money to access, a 3D printer or a welder, for Pete's sake.
I homeschool, so I don't have a lot of opportunities to involve STEM concepts in our education.
At home, that's something we can't provide and offer.
And this space would give them that opportunity.
An Infi Maker Award would help us bring new technology into our space so that we could provide more programs for more kids. Secondly, it would fund professional development and partnership opportunities for local educators and entrepreneurs. Finally, it would help us complete the transformation of our meeting room into a 21st century design thinking lab.
What a space like this can teach you is it can teach you that you can learn absolutely anything.
So what I really loved about that video was that it highlighted libraries using connections within their community and getting really local with providing connected learning. So a local leather worker could come in and help teens who have creative ideas express those ideas, or a woodworker can do something too. So the connection doesn't necessarily have to be technology, and the interests don't have to line up one-to-one. You could help teens make connections between what they're interested in and what their community needs. Part of connected learning also involves civic engagement, so giving teens the opportunities to do projects that improve their communities can be really beneficial, and a way to leverage something they're already interested in, build relationships, and really improve what they do within their communities. So we recommend looking up the YALSA publication, Putting Teens First, a Roadmap, to provide an overview of how libraries in different types of communities are achieving connected learning. Because if you're thinking this is only for a big library where there's lots of opportunities, we just saw a library in a town of 5,000 people on a barely highway road that is doing it really well. So if they can do it, you can do it.
So it's important to make a plan, to look at what you can do in your library to implement more connected learning. So we have a few reflection questions to go through, and these questions will help you plan your next steps for integrating connected learning in your library practice, or seeing where you already are doing some aspects of connected learning and bring it to the next level. They're not linear. You may move back and forth any way you want. The first question is relationships. Who do you need to talk with in the library, in the community, among youth, in order to build connected learning into library services for and with teens?
What are your goals? What would you like to learn from the conversations you have? For example, would you like to learn about the assets community members see that teens bring to the community? Would you like to learn who you might connect with as mentors or coaches for teens? Would you like to learn how teens would like to help their community grow? Be as specific as possible when you're formulating your goals.
Partners. Who might you partner with, and why would they be a good partner? A lot of times libraries immediately think of schools, but do you have any other partners in your community who would be interested in developing new ideas or new interests with teens?
Resources. What resources can the library and community bring to building connected learning services for and with teens and community members? Resources can be people, funds, supplies, and so on. So what's already out there that can help you build a connected learning framework for your library?
Impact. What impact should connected learning work with youth and community achieve? For example, teens have opportunities to develop relationships with peers and with adults. Teens gain social emotional skills.
Outreach. How will you make sure teens that may not be traditional library users are engaged in the connected learning work of the library and the community?
Buy-in. What conversations do you need to have with staff, colleagues, administrators, and community members to achieve buy-in and support in and for this work of connected learning?
What else? What else do you need to learn in order to succeed in this work? There's a lot of information that you might not know you need, and as you work through these questions, more questions might pop up.
Evaluation. How will you know you've been successful? What does success look like as you implement more connected learning into your library practices?
Notes. What else do you want to remember, think about, or keep track of? Keep notes. If you want to learn a little bit more about connected learning and dive deeper, we suggest checking out the Connected Learning Guide from the Chicago Learning Exchange. We showed you their infographic that has the 3 circles that show the intersection of interests, relationships, and opportunities. They also have a reflection form that will help you as you work through the guide and can help you kind of see where you're already at with connected learning. Also, an IMLS-funded project between the University of Maryland and University of Washington called Connected Lib is a great website to check out that has great resources for implementing connected learning in a library setting. Lots of great practical tips. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing and return back to you. So hopefully you have a good understanding of what connected learning is. If nothing else, you remember interests, opportunities, relationships, because that's what's at the heart of it. But when we talk about level up teen learning at your library, we're really talking about intentionally building your services in ways that you provide those opportunities for teens based on their interests, and you help them build relationships that can help them level up their own learning.
This will make teen learning in your library even more insightful and important to the teens that come in, because they know it is about their interests, it's helping them build relationships, and you're creating opportunities. It'll also make it a partnership between you and the teens.
Which is very important. So we hope you've gotten something out of this presentation. At the very least, we just hope that you will take another look at your current programs and services, or if you don't have any programs and services, and think about ways that you can start small. Start with teen interests. Maybe build a program around the teens who are already coming into your library. Look outside your library to see what opportunities you can provide and what relationships you can help build. Connected Learning can really help you transform teen services at your library. So on behalf of Maria and myself, thank you very much for attending our presentation on Connected Learning. And if you have any questions, you can contact us through our email addresses, which I assume will be available somewhere on the presentation platform. So thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.